What's up, guys? So it's middle of winter. I am bored as can be. So what do? I go to Walmart. I get myself a little beta fish tank. I didn't get no beta. What I did is I went and got a bunch of the most popular finesse jig trailers on the market, and we're gonna take a look at how some of them act on the bottom as they're getting dragged across the bottom. So what we've got is a baby rage craw. We got a full-size rage craw. We got a zoom super speed craw. We got a super salt plus small chunk from Zoom. So just basically a big salty chunk, but the small one. And then we got Missle Bait's Craw Father. This is kind of one that I've been throwing for a little while. I know it's not real popular, but I've always caught a bunch of fish on it. And I was like, well, let's see what it looks like dragging across the bottom. So let's rig up a little finesse jig and see what these things look like. All right, we went and got my little finesse jig. That's a little close, and I got the jitters. Hold on, there we go. Focus. Nice little brown jig with a little bit of living rubber in there with a little bit of purple mixed in. I'm gonna do a video on how I make this jig. I've got a bunch of skirt material coming from Tackle Warehouse, and that's in the mail. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out with a trailer that probably the most popular in the country, just a regular sized, not brush hog, good Lord, rage craw. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off these top two nubs on there, basically make it into a rage chunk. Good Lord, I got to be stronger than the plastic. Then kind of thread her on there. I'm not going to put super glue on this thing just because I want to get her back off, but usually I put a dab of super glue on it. So that's what we're looking like. Let's look at the beta tank. All right, guys, we're at the beta tank, and we're about to test our little finesse jig with a full-size rage craw on the back. Look at that thing do a little dance there. So here we go. And just dunk her in the water. And one thing to keep in mind, I'm not making this thing what it looks like on the fall. This beta tank ain't deep enough for that. So we're just kind of bopping it across the bottom as you would. Just kind of pulling a jig along. If you look at it, his tail kind of got caught up there. Now, if you look at it, those pinchers raise up off the bottom in a good defensive manner. And just kind of knowing from pulling this thing through the water quite a bit, it's got a ton of action to it. And it looks like it's raising up in a good defensive manner. If it just kind of sits there, those pinchers just kind of wave back and forth. And it looks like one of them's kind of vibrating a little bit. So definitely can see the reason why you get a lot of bites on this thing. All right, obviously that full-size rage craw is a great bait for a reason. It's caught a ton of fish for tons of people throughout the country, so there's a reason why it's so good. But let's see what the more miniature size looks like and put a baby rage craw on this thing and see what it looks like. So just gonna take the old one off. Grab the little baby, pull apart its legs, just kind of thread her on up on there. It's a lot thinner piece of plastic and kind of feels like shaking hands with a cat while trying to put it on. Kind of get her threaded up on there. All right, so definitely a lot smaller low profile there, just trying to straighten out the skirt a little bit. So a lot smaller low profile, so it kind of looks a little goofy on the hook, but it's definitely a lot smaller profile, a lot less beefy. So let's throw this thing in the tank and see what she looks like. All right, we're back at the jig jacuzzi. Throw this sucker in there. Bebop her across the bottom a little bit. You can see that rage craw, her tails are rising up just like the big one, but again, it just kind of looks like a little bit less crazy. That jig skirt's sure flaring nice in there. It just gives a little bit of something else to it and something just to kind of get that fish to kind of commit on. So it's looking pretty good. I mean, that's about as fast as I can drag it across the tank without it going too crazy. So yeah, just kind of let her sit there for a second and see what she does. As you can see, it just kind of sits there and stands upright. And I mean, if I bump the table, which I guess could emulate current, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you can just see it kind of just, yeah, keeps moving even for a couple seconds after it's been set still. Like that skirt just keeps moving, and that jig trailer just subtly moves with any little bit of movement. So you can definitely see why the old Rage Craw line has gotten so much popularity over the years, because man, it just looks awesome underwater. All right, after we get done with this baby Rage Craw, what we're going to kind of transition into is another type of craw that's got a lot of action on it, a lot of waving arms around and stuff like that. That is the Craw Father. I kind of took 2 little nubs off the top, just like the other one on this one. Just thread her up on there, like what we did on the Rage Craw, and see what it looks like. I'm hoping this is a good mix between, just kind of a good in-between size of the baby Rage Craw and the regular size Rage Craw, because it's got a lot more beef to the body than the other one, than the baby. Just kind of fix this skirt here. Good Lord. Hold on. All right, I got that jig skirt kind of straightened out a little bit. So the Craw Father's got a lot less of a beefy body than the baby Rage Craw, but the pinchers are a lot smaller, a lot more like it, and a lot smaller than the regular size Rage Craw. So I'm kind of hoping that it's got a good little in-between. We'll see what kind of action it looks like it's got while you're dragging that thing across the bottom. All right, let's get her flopped in the jig jacuzzi. But, so yeah, you can see, yeah, she's definitely the little pinchers come cruising straight up as you kind of bop it around. It's got some good little subtle movement. Looks like it's moving with any little move in the water. And I mean, look guys, I'm talking and like just barely bumping the table. You can see the little bit of water ripples moving across. If you got this thing in a lake or a pond or anything like that with any sort of wind or any sort of current, you know them tails are just down there just across the bottom, just getting all kinds of bites. So I really think that that's got a lot of, it's definitely a good in between the normal Rage Craw and the baby Rage Craw. Like I said, I can't really get the action too good in here if I just pull it for a while, but I know this thing's got a ton of good swimming motion for the fall. So definitely something to kind of keep in mind, and I know I've caught quite a few fish on it, so something worth trying. All right, next we're going to try out this Zoom Speed Craw. Basically what I did is again, just like all the other ones, just kind of took a little bit off the top. We'll thread her up on there and see what she looks like in the water. I know this is like a super popular trailer. Good Lord. Super popular trailer, especially like in the Ozarks area, where it's just like, yeah, it's just a little brown jig freaking staple in that area. So not a bad little looking jig. Throw her in the water and see what she looks like. All right, let's see how she looks. All right, kind of just subtle. I mean, a little bit of kick in action, but it kind of raises up in a good way. Little defensive posture there. Just, yeah, I imagine it's just, I mean, it's subtle, but it's got a little bit more action. I mean, it's nothing anywhere close to the Craw Father or Rage Craws, but it's got a nice little, it's a good in between, or it's a good in between, something where you don't want a ton of action, but a little bit. So I mean, it's definitely got its time and place, I feel like. All right, y'all, we got one different kind of trailer left, and it's that Zoom's big salty, small chunky, salty, the small. It's a chunk that's small. That's what we're going to go to next, but there's 2 different ways we're going to rig it. One is a very popular way, and it's just kind of nose hooking it in there. Good Lord, I'm dropping everything. I'm nervous. But just kind of nose rigging it on there like that. I've always thought this way looks stupid, but you hear all them old timers that just catch the crap out of them rigged that way. So let's put it in the tank and see what it looks like on the bottom. I know this is for sure good when those fish are suspended and it kind of gets them on the fall. I think that's when a lot of guys do well with it, but let's see what it looks like on the bottom. All right, Get a little salty swim in there. So looking at it, I mean, just like the other ones, it kind of sticks up. Well, okay, there it goes on the bottom. But it just kind of looks awkward. Like, yeah, it looks like a lot of beef that's hanging out behind something else, and it kind of wiggles around there on the side, and it's definitely interesting. Like, well, I could see how it gets bit, but like that right there, that's a weird little position right there, I feel like. But I mean, heck, a lot of people do well with it, and it kind of goes over to the side and kind of like a nose hook drop shot, just kind of sits cattywampus on there a little bit weird. But I mean, heck, something to try. I mean, a lot of guys have had a lot of success with it. And yeah, as I keep working, it just keeps going more and more to the side. I'll pull her up and put her back down in the water. All right, we've seen it nose hooked. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take it and just kind of thread it up on there like what we've done with all the other trailers so far. Bring her out in the middle there. Make that jig skirt look good around it. All right, there she is. Definitely looks a lot more bulky than before. I'm wondering how this is going to look in the water. And drop it. All right. We're swimming here. I mean, it looks really subtle. I mean, it's definitely the most subtle one that we've had. I mean, it sticks up like it should, and it kind of's got a good little hop to it. I'm thinking this, I mean, all those other ones got a lot more action to it, but man, I mean, sometimes those fish just don't want all that action. So, I mean, I could see how this works pretty dang good. I kind of like this. I'm kind of getting excited about this one. I might have to go throw this thing around. Of course, my jig's getting all messed up because I keep bopping it back and forth. Get off there. There we go. Well, it doesn't always look right, but yeah, I mean, just the kind of way it kind of sits there, pops up, and just kind of sits there and wiggles a little bit with that jig skirt. Kind of liking that. And if you guys are curious about that head, I've got a video about how to get that kind of paint job. I'll link it down below. But yeah, so I think I'll take this off and kind of give a little rundown of my thoughts on all this stuff. All right, guys, of the 5 jig trailers that we kind of played with today, I mean, there's a couple things that kind of got me. One, it was the traditional rage craw. I guess with the kind of top pulled off, it looks more like a rage chunk. But I mean, it just kind of confirmed with me why that one's so good in the summertime, and just as a good overall jig trailer. It's just got a ton of action, and when it's sitting on the ground, it just does what you want it to do. It kind of raises up in the back, and it just kind of sits there and does a little flutter and just kind of moves a little bit with any little move in the water. So again, it just kind of confirmed, like, look, that rage craw chunk is pretty good. The one that was kind of a big surprise for me was the old school salty chunk. I didn't like how it looked really with just kind of nose hooking it on there. I did really like it how it looked when it was threaded up on the hook. Like, it just kind of like just sat there and just kind of moved a little bit, nice and subtle, nothing too crazy. It looked really, really good for like winter pre-spawn, just when those fish are really inactive. So I think that's something I'm going to have to add a lot more to my arsenal and just kind of be more willing to use it. Because I've always looked at it like, it looks like a little stupid like chunk of plastic with a couple little rabbit ears up on there. I don't want to use that. We got these awesome new rage craws. I got all kinds of flapping action. Why do I want to use this? But like, looking at it, like, I think it's got some good potential. So there's that. The one I was kind of most disappointed in was the baby rage craw. It looked super thin. It wasn't real great. It still had quite a bit of action, but for whatever reason on this jig, I'll still use it, especially when I think I need a lot of action, but in a smaller profile. But I definitely liked how that full-size rage craw looked on it better. Yeah, that was kind of a rundown of the jig trailers that I've used some in the past, some I haven't used, and kind of just my thoughts on what they look like just being drug across the bottom. Thanks, guys.